Getting the next level of relationship. We went through Yahweh Adonai, my master. Yahweh Rhea, my friend. Now, Yahweh my father.
Yes.
My father. So let's look at that. The roles in this relationship. The roles in a relationship. He is father. We are children. Who is he? Father. And who are we? Children. Right. Some qualities of a father. Father provides provision, protection, instruction, guidance, correction, direction, love, wisdom, vision, legacy, and inheritance. These are the things that a father provides for his children. The child should be obedient, respectful, responsible, moldable, and understand that that child, you are your father's future. You are your father's future. You're your father's succession. Continues only by you. And it's very, very important. Very important to remember. We're going to dive into that a little bit later. But remember that you, as a child, you are your father's future. Why is it important for a child to be obedient? Why is it important for a child to be obedient? Because at the end of the day, the father is there providing instruction and guidance. How can I instruct and guide if you don't listen to the instruction and the guidance? What good is it? Sounds like a scripture that says your traditions have caused the word of Yah to be of no effect. Disobedience. Then the instruction and the guidance is fruitless. The child is disobedient. Why is it important for a child to be moldable? Y'all, we're not born knowing it all. We don't naturally just grow up wonderful. Like some people are probably amazed at it. They're like, wait a minute. Nobody molded me. I just came out like this. It is very important that a child be groomed and taught. Because if that father has vision and wisdom and love, then they will give that child what they need in order to be the future that they desire. And that means that the child has to be mobile. So let's look at that word. Y'all say that with me. Very easy word. 2 letters. Aleph, bet. It is the first word in the concordance, if you're looking for it, H1. So because it's an Aleph and a bet. The only thing less than that is a Aleph.
Yeah.
Or just an Aleph. And so, so here we have which means father of an individual, of Elohim is father of his people, head or founder of a house. If you look at the word itself, then what you'll see is the word, the 2 letters Aleph and Beit. Aleph meaning the head, and Beit meaning the 10th floor plan or the house, as we would probably call it today, the house. And so this is the head of the house. That's what this is saying when you say father. That's what it's meaning in Hebrew, the head of the house. And so let's look at the word for children, or sons, and sons meaning that it's inclusive of both male and female. So you can use son as in speaking only of a male, or you can use son as speaking of male and female. So when I use bane, I'm speaking of children. So y'all say it with me, bane? Bane. Bane. Now if you look at that word, different from the ab, which is aleph then bait, this starts with the bait. And what did I say bait was? House. The house or the floor plan. And so now what this is saying, now this is very, very, very beautiful. Beautiful picture. The noon. Guess what that means? Sprouting seed. That is the picture of a sprouting seed. So what is that then saying? From the house sprouts the seed. Or from the house grows the seed. Or from the house comes the seed. And so this is what a son, a child, children do. They are the seed coming forth from the house, right? The head of the house brings forth from the house seed. And so a related word is benah, benah. And this is bait noon and adds a hay on the end. Adds a hay on the end. And so when you look at that word, it actually means to build. So think about that. The word that all it added was the hay or the breath letter. All it added was the breath to the sun. And now it means to build. To rebuild or to establish. Or, listen to this, to cause to continue. Isn't that what children do? That's what children do. They cause us to continue. Because, I mean, it's been a lot of research done, a lot of money put into the studies and the science behind this fact. And it's a fact that took a really, really long time to prove out. And there's still research happening on it every single day. And y'all know what it is. Ain't none of us getting out of here alive. We all die. Ever since Adam, there's only been 2 people that got out of here alive. I think that's going to happen too many more times before Yahweh says this is the end. So the only way we continue is what? Children. Children. And one thing I can look around this room and say that y'all really, 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 really understand is be fruitful and multiply. Because y'all gonna multiply. So, obedience to the command. That's all it is. That's true. That's all it is. Just being obedient to the command. Continue to be obedient. Continue to be obedient. And then you're like, oh, so let's look now. Let's flip to Romans. Romans chapter 8:14. Because what stage are we coming from? We're coming from with his servant and friend. Now we're on children, sons. Let's read Romans 8:14. I think that Shaul understood this concept. Let's read this. Romans chapter 8, verse 14. And it reads, "For as many as are led by the Spirit of Elohim, these are sons of Elohim. For you did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you received the spirit of what? Of adoption, by whom we cry out, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of Elohim." Verse 17. "And if children, also heirs, truly heirs of Elohim, and co-heirs with Messiah, if indeed we suffer with him, in order that we also be exalted together. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the esteem that is to be revealed in us. What's going to be revealed in us? It's a continuation. Now listen to this. For the intense longing of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of Elohim. Everything in creation is waiting for the revealing of the sons, the bane of Elohim. Y'all realize what happened when Adam fell? When Adam fell. All creation was knocked off center. Everything. Animals became prey and predator. Right. The hunted and the hunter. And all of a sudden, we had, y'all realize it is not supposed to be like ridiculously cold one part of the year and ridiculously hot the other part of the year. Right. Things are off center. So all of creation fell when man fell. And so what Shaul is saying here is, it is so important for the sons to be revealed, and in order for sons to be revealed, they have to first go back to 15, where it says we receive the spirit of adoption. Right? So some people will get into whether you're blood Israel or whether you're not. I'm going to tell you like this. An adoption makes a son out of a non-son. And that adopted son is just as much son as a blood-born son. Does that make sense? An adoption makes a son out of a non-son. And now that that non-son is a son, he is just as much son as one blood-born. Well, what happens when a blood-born son is wayward? So let's go to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 21 and 18. And let's see how seriously Yahweh takes the obedience of a son. Because we just read how a non-son can become a son through the spirit of adoption. Now what happens with a son who is wayward and rebellious? Deuteronomy chapter 21 verse 18, and it says, when a man has a wayward and rebellious son, who is not listening to the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and who, when they have disciplined him, does not listen to them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city, to the gate of his city, and shall say to the elders of the city, this son of ours is wayward and rebellious. This blood-born son is wayward and rebellious. He is not listening to our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of his city shall stone him to death with stones. Why? Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst, and let all Israel hear and fear. That's how serious it was. So one place we see how a non-son becomes a son. I submit to you, this is how a son becomes a non-son. When a son decides that he no longer wants to be obedient, the same way that that son can become a that non-son can become a son by adoption, that son can become a non-son. He can be separated from among his people. So it's important to understand that. So what is this thing? Then we have to understand that it goes beyond whether you're blood-born or not? Now, my stance and my personal opinion, I think that it's some clear indications as to who some of these blood-born sons are, living out some of these curses that were pronounced upon the rebellious and disobedient son. We can kind of see that. But regardless of whether you believe that or not, regardless of whether you believe you are Israel by blood or not, what does it really look like? Let's go to Yeshua. What does he say? John chapter 3, verse 3. John chapter 3, verse 3. This is conversation with Nicodemus, or as you would hear it said most notably in King James, says Nicodemus. And he says in John 3, verse 3, Yeshua answered and said to him, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born from above, he is unable to see the reign of Elohim. Wow. Nicodemus said to him, how is a man able to be born when he is old? Is he able to enter into his mother's womb a second time and be born? Yeshua answered, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit. We just read where he spoke of that in the previous chapter. And it says he is unable to enter into the reign of Elohim. Put a finger on that. He is unable to enter into the reign of Elohim. Right. Verse 6, that which has been born of the flesh is flesh, and that which has been born of the Spirit is spirit. Do not marvel that I have said to you, you have to be born from above. Yeah. This takes birthright and places it more so within your decision, more so within what you have decided within yourself. Whether you will be obedient, whether you will follow, whether you will be a disciple, whether you will listen to his ways. And not, oh well, I wasn't born in a rich family, so I can never do anything. Or, oh well, I wasn't born Jewish, so I guess I'm not part of his chosen people. That's not quite how this works. That's not quite how this works. Let's go to Matthew 18 and look at more of what Yeshua says. And this is a question in Matthew 18:1 of the taught ones. And this is what it says in reading again, starting in verse 1. At that time the taught ones came to Yeshua, saying, who then is greatest in the reign of the heavens? Now remember when John 3:3 we read about him talking to Nicodemus, and he says that you have to be born of the water and the Spirit to enter the reign. Now let's read verse 2. And Yeshua called a little child to him, set him in their midst, and said, truly I say to you, unless you turn and become as little children, you shall by no means enter into the reigns of the heavens. Whoever then humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the reign of the heavens. Hallelujah. Become as this little child. Why? Why is all of this focus on being reborn, being a child? Why all of this focus on that? Well, let's go back to what we discussed as the characteristics and responsibilities of a child. What is Yahweh saying? Be as this little child. Be obedient. Be respectful to Yahweh. Understand that you have to be responsible for what Yahweh has given us. Right. Understand that you have to allow Yahweh to mold you. Y'all, people try to mold Yahweh. Just trying to make him into, like, go get you a little figurine and make your own God if you want something that's going to do what you want it to do. But Yahweh is the creator of the heavens and the earth. He says, I am that which I am. You are the creation. He is the creator. You don't get to tell him what we gonna do and what we gonna offer him. Are there times where he asks for that? Sure. He says those who worship me must worship me in spirit and in truth. And so he wants sincerity from us. But we got to stop this, this is probably the most famous one. But that's not why I do it. Okay, so let me get this straight. You don't keep the Sabbath. And then your reason is, that's not why I do it. Let me get this right. You're still celebrating things that he said don't celebrate. But that's not why I do it. Let me get this straight. There are so many things that he asked us to do that we aren't doing. And we have all the excuses in the world as to why I shouldn't have to do it. At some point, we have to let Yahweh speak for himself. And some of this, y'all, he's made perfectly clear to us. He's made perfectly clear to us. And so understanding that, we have to know that that's important to understanding the next level. We have to understand that. So we're looking again, we're looking at this concept of children. And I submit to you the importance is right here, found in grace. The importance is right here. The greatest form of grace is literally time. That's grace. When Yahweh spoke and said, in the day that man sins, he shall surely die. The greatest form of grace was allowing a day to be as 1,000 years. And so, even within that, Adam lived to be 930 years old. Grace. What could he do with 930 years that got messed up on that one day of disobedience? What is it that he could do? Extend to his generations. Teach. Train. Why? Because now what's born into the earth has to be controlled. What's born into the earth, we need a plan for. This disobedience, this sin that is now prevalent, needs to be addressed. And so Yahweh gives him time. So if the greatest form of grace is time, then think about this. Generations are the greatest extension of time. The fact that I have a son that I can teach, that I can instill in him, is the greatest extension of me. Because that continues from generation to generation to generation. Which is why it's so important for obedience to the Father. If we don't teach our children, what does he say? Teach it to your children. So I'm going to start this off. I want y'all to finish it. Okay? Y'all ready? I am Yahweh Elohim. Y'all know the... Right? Keep going. You do not. You do not. Remember. Respect. Why is that one? Respect, meaning to understand the ways of your father and your mother.
That's right.
Why? So you can walk in the ways of your father and your mother. Now, here's the thing. Understanding that if there's obedience to Yahweh, this is your example of what to do. If there's disobedience to Yahweh, this is your example of what not to do.
That's right. That's right.
And so now, let's do that one more time. So finish this off. And you shall love
Yahweh Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might.
and these
Words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart.
and you shall
Rest them
upon your children. Why is this so important? Yahweh is putting this everywhere. Why is it so important? Extension of time. If I teach my son to walk in the ways of Yahweh, he teaches his son to walk in the ways of Yahweh, we will make it back.
Exactly.
Hallelujah.
Exactly.
We'll make it back. Y'all, we still, anybody in the garden? We got any garden dwellers in here? Nobody's in the garden, right? We're trying to make it back. We're trying to make it back to that place where Yahweh designed to be in fellowship with his creation. That's the original design. And that's what we're trying to get back to. And so we're trying to get back to that place with Yahweh. And if I teach my children obedience, then instead of me coming down with this rebellious and wayward son, I'll have one that's not even my son that comes and says, what shall I do? What can I do? How can I be a part? I'll have more Caleb's in the camp. More Caleb's in the camp. So let's look at some examples here. Let's look at some examples here. So a great father-child relationship. Let's look at Abraham and Yitzhak. And I'm going to read this, and this is coming from the book of Yasher. And so this gives, and obviously I could have given some examples, but this is going to give some backdrop behind what took place when Abraham took Yitzhak to the mountain to offer him as a sacrifice. So I want you to understand also, because whose role I really want us to cue in on is that of the child. Why? Because that's us. We're always trying to figure out what somebody else is supposed to be doing, but we need to figure out what we need to be doing. So let's cue in on our role as the child. So we've always looked at it from Abraham's perspective. Let's look at it from Yitzhak's perspective. So this is in the book of Jasher, chapter 22, and starting at verse 51, and I'm going to just read down. And now that his son Isaac is born to him, he has forsaken thee. Let me give you a little bit of backdrop. This is Hasatan coming to before the Father's throne, just like in Job, where it says in the time of the sons of Elohim came to come before the throne, and Hasatan was amongst them, and he, being the accuser, is now accusing Abraham. So the same way he accused Job, he's now accusing Abraham, and he's coming before Yahweh to say, hey, give me permission to touch him now. So similar scenario. So I'll start back over. And now that his son, this is Hasatan speaking, his son is born to him, he has forsaken thee. He has made a great feast for all the inhabitants of the land, and Yahweh he has forgotten. For amidst all that he has done, he brought thee no offering, neither burnt offering, nor peace offering, neither ox, lamb, nor goat, of all he killed on the day that his son was weaned. Even from the time of his son's birth till now, being 37 years. Note to self, 37 years. That means Yitzhak is 37 years old. He wasn't no little kid that his father was just, as we used to say, suck your mind. That wasn't happening. He wasn't just being talked out of, he wasn't just dangling like a little cookie in front of him and leading his son up that mountain. It's a 37-year-old man. He knows what's going on. I was 37 just last year. I like to think I knew what was going on in the world last year. So let's go back. Verse 53. Even from the time of his son's birth till now, being 37 years, he built no altar before thee. nor brought any offering to thee, for he saw that thou didst give what he requested before thee, and he therefore forsook thee. And Yahweh said to Satan, Hast thou thus considered my servant Abraham? For there is none like him upon earth, a perfect and upright man before me, one that feareth Elohim and avoideth evil, as I live. Were I to say unto him, Bring up Ishak or Isaac, thy son, before me, he would not withhold him from me. Much more if I told him to bring up a burnt offering before me from his flock or herds. And Hasatan answered Yahweh and said, Speak then now unto Abraham as thou hast said, and thou wilt see whether he will not this day transgress and cast aside thy words. And this is chapter 23. At that time the word of Yahweh came to Abraham, and he said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Here I am. He said to him, Take now thy son, thine only son whom thou lovest, even Ishak or Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which shall be shown to thee. For there wilt thou see a cloud in the glory of Yahweh. And Abraham said within himself, How shall I separate my son Ishak from Sarah, his mother, in order to bring him up for a burnt offering before Yahweh? And Abraham came into the tent, and he sat before Sarah his wife, and he spoke these words to her, My son Ishak is grown up, and he has not for some time studied the service of Elohim. Now tomorrow I will go and bring him to Shem and Eber his son, and there he will learn the ways of Yahweh, for they will teach him to know Yahweh as well as to know that when he prayeth continually before Yahweh, he will answer him. Therefore there he will know the way of serving Yahweh as Elohim. And now skipping to verse 50 within chapter 23. And when they were going along, Ishak said to his father, Behold, I see here the fire and wood. And where then is the lamb that is to be the burnt offering before Yahweh? And Abraham answered his son Ishak, saying, Yahweh has made choice of thee, my son, to be a perfect burnt offering instead of the lamb. And Ishak, now keep, remember, who we're focusing on? Us, the children. Ishak is the son here. Understand how the son approached the father. And it says, And Ishak said unto his father, I will do all that Yahweh spoke to thee with joy and cheerfulness of heart. And Abraham again said unto Ishak his son, Is there in thy heart any thought of counsel concerning this, which is not proper? Tell me, my son, I pray thee. Oh, my son, conceal it not from me. He's checking on his son. He's like, This don't bother you just a little bit? Like, aren't you concerned? And this was Isaac's answer. And Isaac answered his father Abraham and said unto him, O my father, as Yahweh liveth and as thy soul liveth, there is nothing in my heart to cause me to deviate either to the right or to the left from the word that he has spoken to thee. Neither limb nor muscle has moved or stirred against this. Nor is there in my heart any thought or evil counsel concerning this. But I am joyful and cheerful heart, in this matter. And I say, Blessed is Yahweh, who has this day chosen me to be a burnt offering before him. And Abraham greatly rejoiced at the words of Ishak, and they went on and came together to that place that Yahweh had spoken of. 61. And Ishak said to his father, Bind me securely, and then place me upon the altar, lest I should turn and move, and break loose from the force of the knife upon my flesh, and thereof profane the burnt offering. And Abraham did so. And Ishak still said to his father, O my father, when thou shalt have slain me and burnt me for an offering, take with thee that which shall remain of my ashes to bring to Sarah my mother, and say to her, This is the sweet smelling savor of Ishak. But do not tell her this if she should sit near a well or upon any high place, lest she should cast her soul after me and die. 63. And Abraham heard the words of Yitzchak, and he lifted up his voice and wept. When Yitzchak spake these words, and Abraham's tears gushed down upon Isaac his son, and Isaac wept bitterly. And he said to his father, Hasten thou, O my father, and do with me the will of Yahweh our Elohim, as he has commanded thee. And the heart of Abraham and Yitzchak rejoiced at this thing which Yahweh had commanded them, but the eye wept bitterly, whilst the heart rejoiced. Here you have a child that delighted in the will of Yahweh, even though it was not good for him. That's the place where we have to find ourselves. Where the will of Yahweh is what we desire, not our own satisfaction. That's when we get stuck. For some reason, we feel like if it doesn't make me tingly and bubbly inside, if it doesn't put a smile on my face, then Yahweh must not want it. We confuse ourselves and our feelings and emotions for his will and desire. And the enemy uses that to play tricks and to get us suckered into these big systems. And this is why tomorrow churches will be full.
Right.
Full to capacity to get an emotional high, to get a pat on the back, to be told you're wonderful, you're great. All the things that God can do for you is what you'll hear about. Nothing about what you can do for him. All the things that he can do for you. So let's look at a not so great father-son relationship. David and Absalom. 2 Samuel chapter 14:25. So this is that. The first one was what we should aspire to be. This is what we should aspire not to be. Okay? So 2 Samuel chapter 14 verse 25, and it reads, in all Israel there was no one who was praised as much as Absalom for his good looks. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. And when he cut the hair of his head, for it was at every year's end that he cut it, because it was heavy on him. When he cut it, he weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels by the sovereign's weight. Chapter 15. And it came to be, now this man was perfect, right? At least he looked that way. And it came to be after this that Absalom prepared a chariot and horses for himself, and 50 men to run before him. I think he was a little full of himself. And then verse 2. And Absalom used to rise early and stand beside the way to the gate. And it came to be whenever anyone who had a complaint came to the sovereign, which was his father, for a right ruling, that Absalom would call to him and say, what city are you from? And when he said, your servant is from such and such a tribe of Israel, Absalom would say to him, look, your matters are good and right, but you are nobody from the sovereign to hear you. And Absalom would say, oh, that I were made judge in the land, and everyone who has any complaint or case will come to me, and I shall let right be done to him. And it came, this dude's running a campaign. This is how campaigns are run today.
Absolutely.
Verse 5, and it came to be, whenever anyone came near him to bow down to him, that he would put out his hand and take him and kiss him. And Absalom did this to all Israel who came to the sovereign for right rule. And Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. Stole the hearts. Dirty. You know his goal. His goal was to displace his father as king.
Right.
It was to displace his father as king. Another not so great father-child relationship. Eli and Hophni and Phinehas. And we know Eli was the prophet, the high priest in the land, and he had 2 sons. So let's read about that. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 12. And the sons of Eli were sons of Belial. They did not know Yahweh. Interesting. They did not know Yahweh. And the sin of the young men was very great before Yahweh, for the men despised the offering of Yahweh. Chapter 2, verse 22. And Eli was very old, and had heard all that his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who were assembling at the door of the tent of meeting. And he said to them, why do you do deeds like these? For I hear of your evil deeds from all the people. No, my sons, for it is not a good report that I hear, making the people of Yahweh transgress. If one man sins against another, Elohim shall judge him. But if a man sins against Elohim, who shall pray for him? But they did not listen to the voice of their father, though Yahweh was pleased to put them to death. Verse 30. Therefore Yahweh Elohim of Israel declares, I said, indeed, that your house and the house of your father would walk before me forever. But now Yahweh declares, far be it from me, for those who highly esteem me, I highly esteem, and those who despise me are lightly esteemed. See, the days are coming that I shall cut off your arm and the arm of your father's house, so that an old man shall not be found in your house. And you shall see an enemy in my dwelling place, despite all the good which Elohim does for Israel. And there shall not be an old man in your house forever. Verse 33. But any of your men whom I do not cut off from my altar is to consume your eyes and grieve your life. And all the increase of your house die as men. And this is the sign to you that comes upon your 2 sons, upon Hophni and Phinehas. In one day they are going to die, both of them. And I shall raise up for myself a trustworthy priest, who does according to what is in my heart and in my being. And I shall build him a steadfast house. But now I shall build him a steadfast house, and he shall walk before my anointed forever. Verse 36. And it shall be that everyone who is left in your house shall come and bow down to him for a piece of silver and a cake of bread, and say, please put me in one of the priestly positions to eat a piece of bread. And the young Shemuel was serving Yahweh before Eli. This is who it is. And the word of Yahweh was rare in those days, no vision breaking forth. And it came to be in that day that Eli was lying down in his place, and his eyes had begun to grow so dim that he was unable to see. And the lamp of Elohim had not gone out. It always has a ram in the bush. Shemuel, in the Hekel of Yahweh, where the ark of Elohim was. And Shemuel was lying down to sleep. And we know the rest. He began to call Shemuel. And Shemuel went to Eli and said, hey, I've heard this voice. Have you called me? And he said, no. But on that last time he says, if he calls you again, say, here I am. So here it is that the natural way of generation building was for Phinehas and Hophni to follow the ways of their father, right? They chose not to. So what did Yahweh do? Cut them off. And here's another son that comes and is literally gifted. His parents said, they made a promise, and they says, if you give us a child, we will give him back to you for your sins. And this is the life of Shemuel. This is the life of Shemuel. And so we understand this here now is the rebuilding, because what does he say? What does he say in that promise to him? In 35, he says, I shall build him a steadfast house. This is what this is about. Yahweh is building his house through his children. It's important for us to behave like children. That sounds funny, doesn't it? I just told a room full of grown people to behave like children. But that is exactly what Yeshua says will get us into the kingdom. Behaving like children. Be obedient. Be respectful. We have to be moldable. We have to understand our responsibility of being Yahweh's future. The way Yahweh will get his Torah to his people is through you. Through you. So this is why it's important. This is what Yahweh needs from us, to be children. Amen.
Father, it's me. Please hear me, my King. I know I am unholy, so unworthy and unclean, but I yearn to know you. My soul thirsts for you, and my temple is broke, it's broken down. Oh, take me and make me new, yeah. Oh, Father, hear me, God who rules. I'm not asking for blessings, not your hand, Lord.